Thank you, Pranav. So let me get started. And for those of you who wanted to join our WhatsApp group for Q&As and all, you can use that code to join the group as well. Right. Now, one of the main things that perhaps Professor Srivastav kind of talked about is that entrepreneurship is not a very easy journey, right? At the end of the day, when we think about entrepreneurship, it is a behavioral act of risk to connect capital to labor, right? So it's a mindset, right? And we generally discuss about innovation, about being able to create something and then taking it to market, right? That's been the conventional attitude, but I kind of tend to think about it a little differently, right? In my mind, the picture is actually a little flipped, right? It is first about, getting into that mindset of being able to solve a problem and then going about and creating new experiences or new process efficiencies, right? That is where the innovation comes in, right? So innovation and should not be confused with invention. Invention takes a lot more effort on the foundational part of it to come up with something completely different, right? So you can invent an algorithm, but from an entrepreneurship perspective, right, the way I feel about it is once you get into that mindset of a problem bugging you so much that you want to find a solution to it, right? And that's where you start looking at different ways to solve the problem. Some of it could be technical, some of it could be non-technical solutions, right? So there could be different ways of solving the problem, and each of them could have different attributes of innovation in it, right? Now, India has been warming up to this idea of innovation, of companies starting to create a lot of value, right? In India, we have a billion plus people. So there are different people in different financial brackets. There are different people in different demographic brackets, right? So even in any one of those buckets, right, there is a large population addressable market, right? In order to tap into that, the Indian ecosystem has evolved, right, in order to create companies which have become unicorns, right? But if you look at the graph, right, if you look at probably Make My Trip becoming India's first unicorn back in 2010, right? So that's a dozen years ago. And it was probably in the making for another 3-4 years before that, right? But over time, 2010, 2011, 2012, right, there were fewer and fewer, there are more and more companies which are joining this unicorn valuation, right? Of course, part of it can be argued that there is a increased capital flow within the country itself. But if you look at what's been happening since 2020 with the pandemic affecting us, a lot of different companies started to take.
Sir, your voice is not audible.
I'm sorry about that. Right. So clearly there is a scope to create more unicorns in the country, and I'm sure that there are going to be new unicorns that are going to be born at a faster rate in India, right? But what is more important is the pyramid, it's the ecosystem of companies that are coming out, right? So yes, we can hope for another 20, 50, 100 odd unicorns, but there are going to be millions of smaller organizations. There are going to be probably even several million companies that are much smaller in nature, but are providing independent, they're providing value independently, right? Which is why today's topic I picked on entrepreneurship as a career choice, right? Because many of you who are still in your undergraduate program, right, may go forward to get into higher education, and then you may choose to come back into public sector careers or get into professional careers yourselves. But apart from these traditional choices, right? There is now, I would strongly say that, entrepreneurship is a valid career choice now. And that is what I want to explain and impress upon during the rest of my discussion, right? If I look at companies per se, as to what kind of companies people would be looking at, right? Of course, the companies are not going to start big from day one, right? And I broadly classify them as 4 groups of companies, right? Of course, there's going to be family businesses. Many of you are coming in from families which are running businesses, and if you are a second generation or a third generation person in the family business, then the typical focus as a third generation, fourth generation founder typically becomes in terms of expanding and diversifying the business, right? Assuming that if you are coming in from a family business, there is that past discussion. There is, even at dinner table meetings, there are a lot of discussions about how the business is moving, what needs to be done, what are the supply chains. So there is a lot of discussion that is already happening, and you're probably being groomed for taking over the family business at some point, right? So there is a lot of discussion that has already happened through your formative period. But if you are a first generation entrepreneur, then things are different, right? We do not get into these conversations about setting up a company at our dinner tables, right? That is why something like Institute Incubation Cell, something like an entrepreneurship webinar, right? These are become forums where we can discuss about how that journey has been and what it means. Right? So that's the first category of companies, which are family businesses. The second category of companies are essentially of the form of micro, small, medium enterprises, right? Or typically kind of workshops, right? And most of these have a demand focus. What I mean by that is, if you are planning to set up a workshop, the product that you are making, it's well understood by the market, right? Because it is well understood by the market, the kind of equipment or the kind of capital goods that you might need to create a workshop like that is also pretty well understood, right? And this is where you can look at support in the form of capital loans or things like that, even from banks, right? So that you can start that workshop. The third category of companies is where there is a stronger focus on the innovation part of it, right? And just like a movie, you do not know how the movie will behave until it is actually playing in screens, right? In spite of it having the biggest star cast, a movie may fail. In spite of it having relatively unknown names, a movie can become a runaway hit, right? So startups, these are essentially technology-led organizations with a deep focus on innovations, on solving a particular problem, right? How big the problem is it the right way to solve the problem? Those are things that you do not get to know about until you test the waters, until you start talking to potential customers, until you start talking to people who might be supplying you with some technology, unless you start talking with people who are potential competitors, right? So startups are typically innovation driven, and there is a very, very deep, there's a fundamental expectation that the founders of startups are going to understand that technology very well themselves, right? Not only this, there's also a fourth category of companies where innovation is happening significantly, where there is a lot of scope for creating companies, and this typically comes in the form of one-person companies or practices, right? These OPCs take on the knowledge base of an individual, and you, instead of having a proprietary company which cannot be registered with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, you can create a one-person company. And I'll talk about this in detail, because many of you who are advanced researchers, who are research scholars, right, who are faculty members themselves, can start to offer services and create value within the ecosystem by bundling their expertise, right? Now, not only can you create this kind of companies, I will cover each of them, except for the family business. I will probably cover the MSME, the incentives, the ecosystem support, the policy support that is available for MSME, for startups and the OPCs as well. Right now, this is a very, very good time to start entrepreneurial activities in India because of what I feel are three underlying factors. Right? Why is it that we are having this discussion today? Because we have understood that we need job creators, and in order to create job creators, there has to be fundamental support that is coming in from the ecosystem. In order to provide that support, there are a few things that have happened. The first thing is that there is a bunch of what I call our enabling technologies, right? These are building blocks at a massive scale, which accelerate the development of new solutions and services in the market, right? So that's the first factor. Because we have these new tools with us, we can develop new services faster. The second thing I want to bring your attention to is the fact that the workforce itself is changing. There is a lot of shift happening in the workforce and the type of new work that is coming into the market now, right? In terms of what can be done, right? And finally, there is a thrust from the government in terms of incentivizing young innovators, right? So three fundamental things are being taken care of. One is this enabling technologies that are available, the changing workforce, so as to put it, right, and the incentives that are available for young innovators, right? Somebody put forward a question as to what are the biggest challenges facing aspiring entrepreneurs today. I'll come to that question in a little bit. Right? I'll come to that question as we discuss more in terms, get into the solutioning part of it. But let's understand what is available to us in order to start a company today. Right? The first thing is the digital. What do I mean by saying that there is a digital India's enabling technology stack? Right? If you look at it from a policy perspective, there are two things. There's the larger, there is the Make in India initiative in order to ensure that we can manufacture, to support manufacturing organizations, even if they are MSMEs, right? We want to be able to support them, and we also want to start supporting new ideas itself, which is coming under the Startup India. Under the Startup India scheme, with the overall aim of creating Aatmanirbhar Bharat, right? In order to create Aatmanirbhar Bharat, we need knowledgepreneurs. We need people with deep insights about the ecosystem, about the local problems, right? In order to come forward and try to solve them. Therefore, we need an ecosystem company, right? What are these technology blocks? I can guarantee that pretty much every one of you have used UPI, right? Unified Payment Interface. It's a very, very simplified payment procedure that allows us to transfer funds, between two mobile phones without having to route all that financial information through a third party located in a foreign land. Right? It allows peer-to-peer settlement between banks themselves, right? So without overloading the system. It's a tremendous boom because it allows us to become, it allows us to integrate payment mechanisms in our apps themselves. It allows us to move towards a cashless society, right? And in doing so, it brings about transparency and traceability within the system. Right? Not only that, because payment can be integrated directly into an app, it starts to facilitate a lot of different business models. It starts to facilitate business models like cash on delivery, right? It starts to facilitate business models where small enterprises can be paid from pretty much anywhere across the country. And now we are starting to integrate that with the payment system in Singapore as well, right? So gradually our technology is starting to open up with and integrate with other payment systems across the world, right? In doing so, today, one of the, I was reading this article where multiple countries, I think 18 countries have signed up in order to trade in the Indian rupee. Right? That's also a big benefit because we are looking at dollar alternatives in terms of modes of payment itself, right? The next big building block is probably, in my mind, it is probably the Aadhar system, right? Because it's the world's largest biometric identification system, right? It significantly automates a lot of KYC processes. So any kind of application where you are looking for verifying the identity of the end user, right? You don't have to go through a long process anymore, right? It can be integrated into an Aadhar integration itself, right? So for a lot of B2G services, or if you are planning of building a company which focuses on a B2G service or even a G2C service, right, a government to citizens kind of a service, right, you have a default mechanism in order to do your authentication, right? Because it's, a little more advances. Just think about it. So many apps today support sign-in using Google, right? Why should we trust a third-party MNCs in order to maintain all our security information, right? When we can do it ourselves, when we can have biometric-based authentication. We are our own OTPs. We are our own identifiers, right? So it can make a lot of process significantly more efficient, right? If you are looking at implementing, say, for example, a fertilizer subsidy application, right? You get direct data from the point of sale itself, right, as to whether there is any leakage in that channel, right? So in my mind, Aadhar is a big building block that allows us to do seamless KYC. The third part is our taxation system. Not only can we identify people, but can we make payments seamlessly from our mobile? We can also pay our taxes, right? The GST network that we have, it's a very, very stable network, right? And that allows us to also give the government its share in terms of our taxation liabilities, right? We have been building a lot of as a country, we have been going more and more paperless, right? And that is where something like a DigiLocker comes in very, very handy, right? Without, the documents that you have on DigiLocker is digitally signed by the government itself, right? So they are as good as an original by decree, right? By legal statute. So this becomes a key mechanism to essentially automate a number of processes. So if you can think of a process that can be better implemented, nobody is stopping you from doing it, right? Another hidden gem that many people may not necessarily be aware of, let me cover ONDC as well. I do not know if any of you have heard of this, right? It's a new retailing initiative. It's an open network for digital commerce. And what this is allowing us to do is, suppose, for example, you wanted to set up an e-commerce store on, you wanted to sell your products on, say, an Amazon or a Flipkart, right? Now, the people who are coming in and buying your product, right? You do not, the platform is abstracting the customer data from you. So you do not get to know, as a seller, you do not get to know who your buyers are, right? And this is an asymmetrical, this is asymmetric information. right? So the ONDC, what it attempts to do is create a more level playing ground so that you are the owner of your customers' data, right? If people are interested in your product, you should be able to know who they are. You should be able to reach out to them in order to build up your business, right? So apps, e-commerce stores that are starting to integrate ONDC into their building are creating a more transparent marketplace for Indians in India, right? So that's the vision behind it, right? The hidden gem that I wanted to talk about was called API Setu, right? It's a wonderful tool. It's a wonderful initiative by the government where all the e-governance apps that have been created, right, that have been funded by the central government, all those APIs are made available publicly, right? Because all this information is available publicly, you can now pick and choose which APIs you want to integrate and create an app and monetize that, right? Essentially in a matter of days, right? So understand the implication of what I'm talking about here. For you to go ahead and build an app does not take, that entry barrier has reduced so much. For you to set up store on the app store and put an app out there, it is not about several months, several years of planning. The entry barrier has come down to probably a day, right? That's how easy it is, right? You might not believe me. You might say that, okay, how will I monetize a particular, how will I build and monetize an app in a matter of a day, right? When I was putting together this presentation, I went about and saw how easy is building an app like this, right? So I went to API Setu and I looked up the APIs that are available for Guru Ghasidas Vishwavidyalaya, right? So what are the APIs that are given? Complete listing that is, with the APIs, with the access credentials, with the request bodies, right? How do I exchange information with the system like this? All that information is documented, right? And not only that, they have already implemented it in a test server. If you are building a commercial application, you need to write to the team and request for a production API key, and you will have production access to this, right? I took this API and then I went to ChatGPT and said, build me an app that is going to make, that is going to use this request and send data over an API call and display the information, right? 5 minutes, I got a Python code that is able to do this functionality, right? I went to another app called Mixo, and I used this information saying that I want to build a website where students can log in and they should be able to see their degree certificates, right? And I have a website that is a marketing website that is SEO ready and everything in a matter of seconds. Of course, it needs some degree of customization, but the fact remains that I can create a working prototype, a working website with my idea in a matter of a day, right? That's the power of the enablers that we have. That's the acceleration in service deployment that we get today. It is not about years of, it is not about years that we need to spend in order to build an app anymore or build a product in the market. It is a matter of days, right? So keep that into account when it comes to our ability to deliver and create new offerings in the market, right? So that's one part of it. The second point that I brought up is that our workforce itself is changing. And this is something, again, which speakers before me, they brought up that the entrepreneurial journey, or rather the career path itself has changed over time, right? If I went and talked to my, my parents or probably their parents in the old economy, you could go in with a letter to a company and, with an informal interview, they could hire you, right? So that's how you got a job earlier on, right? But over time, we saw that many of these jobs started to come online, right? So we got into the e-commerce economy in the late 90s, where people could, the stores, the brick and mortar stores were opening up virtually, right? So people who were needed for managing a store suddenly became IT workers, and you needed a lot more people to manage the website, maintain the website, the networking equipment, and all of that, right? So that created a boom for the IT industry in India, where we were setting up e-commerce portals all over the globe, right? In the next 5 years, right, by 2007, 8-ish time frame, right, what was happening was you started seeing the emergence of the app economy. You did not have to connect to your laptop or your device to the internet, right? You were always connected. You had a screen in front of you that was connected to the internet. When Apple introduced its smartphone, the entire mobile phone became a gateway to the internet, and therefore it became, the e-commerce economy naturally evolved into the app economy, where somebody had access to the audience right in front of them. So if you were building a good app, right, you could list it on Play Store, or you could list it on App Store, and people would download it. Either you got money out of the downloads, or you got money from the services you sold through that app itself, right? So a lot of new business models started to evolve around it, right? Selling various things on the through an app portal. And here you find that the brand value suddenly of large organizations. Think of the kind of effort that it took to make Coca-Cola a worldwide brand, right? Candy Crush, an app that came out of this app economy, a simple gaming app, right? Angry Birds, right? These were apps that hit runaway success and probably has significant brand value, right? Leading the charge was probably a company we all know about, right? Facebook, right? Facebook and iPhone kind of played hand in hand with people getting, browsing more of the social network on this new internet device that internet connected, always on device that they found. And because of the device, people started accessing social media all the more. In the process, people started creating a lot of digital traces, right, of their interactions. Companies started to track which websites you were visiting, what your preferences were, when were you browsing, what were the things you were browsing for, and suddenly there was a trove, literally a digital treasure trove of information, right? We knew a lot more about consumers than ever before, right? We knew a lot more about consumers than placing billboard ads or by placing ads on TV. We knew exactly who was likely to buy a particular product, right? And therefore, this spawned a whole generation, a whole new range of companies which had different kinds of business models. Somebody came in with a pay-per-click advertising model. Somebody came with a pay-per-view advertising model. Somebody came in with a pay-per-lead advertising model. Somebody came up with a pay for the service you consume advertising model, right? So a whole bunch of service models came up because of this, and suddenly there was a whole new group of digital advertisers who became prevalent, right? These digital advertisers understood the metrics about people's browsing habits. They understood how to create new websites that were intuitive for the end user, right? They knew the movement patterns of consumers on particular websites, and they knew exactly which ad to sell you, right? This was the personalization economy, leading to a completely new workforce being created. People who were specialized in digital marketing, in search engine optimization, in influencer marketing, things like that. Right? In doing so, while some people were able to migrate into this new workforce, right? by the 2014, 20, you started seeing a new workforce coming into the market, right? This workforce was not constrained by an office space anymore. This workforce was not constrained by a boss telling them what to do. This was a workforce where the work was distributed by software, the gig economy, right? The driver partners, right? Delivery partners, a lot of jobs that came on demand. And what it did is it allowed people with, people started getting into the gig economy on a full-time basis, but it also allowed a lot of people to explore this in partial forms, right? People could go into the gig economy maybe 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, right? People started buying up their own cars and plying it on ride sharing apps, right? So that was the gig economy. Independent workers working their own times essentially, but the way the work was getting distributed was becoming more and more algorithmic. Right? Then came the pandemic that brought about a transformation in the kind of jobs that we need in the market now, right? The market that is coming up now is a very, very interesting market, which I think is what I call as the interdisciplinary economy, right? Today with ChatGPT, I think everybody has a personal assistant. Today you can get to learn about new areas very, very quickly. We are also seeing the introduction of national education policy in India, which is taking away that very siloed, very siloed experiences that we have been having, right? A degree in computer engineering or a degree in electrical engineering. With the NEP coming into the picture, things are going to get more blended. We are going to have more individuals who may have taken 3 courses in computer science, 2 courses in economics, and 2 in fine arts, setting up companies which specialize in, ad exploration and building AI for understanding gender discrimination in ads, right? So that is where you will see new value being unlocked in this interdisciplinary economy. So that is a major change that is coming about in the workforce. The other thing that is happening, and you will see reflections of this when you hear about a lot of the traditional tech employers, right, letting go of people, right? The IT industry, which has been a very strong employer, right? Both the IT as well as the ITES industry in India, they have been very, very strong hirers. But with the introduction of AI-based tools like ChatGPT or DALI, right, or copywriting tools, many of these jobs, right, may become, defined very, very differently. In our software development parlance, right, we needed to have developers, we needed to have code reviewers or team lead who review the code, and then we had testing teams, and then we had deployment teams who deploy the code. Right? With ChatGPT, I think what is happening is many of the things are the team leaders are being asked to auto-generate the code and review them themselves, right? So they're kind of absorbing both those works, and then essentially they're playing the role of the tester, and then they're deploying it, right? So instead of a team of 5 or 6 people, perhaps you needed a team of 2 or 3 people, right? So the IT industry, I think it is headed for a significant upskilling in terms of the kind of workforce that it can support, right? And that will again change in the workforce itself. Now, the business ecosystem is such that where jobs go away from one end, there are new opportunities that come into the picture, right? For example, recently we all know that Air India went on a shopping spree and bought 1,000 planes, right? So these 1,000 planes, as they start getting into India, it's going to require a full crew of people to manage them. They're going to require a full crew of people to service them, right? So suddenly what we find is people who were working in the ITES sector, right, who were taking customer calls, can suddenly start migrating as cabin crew, right? You might find people who are studying in our core engineering disciplines and then migrated into IT. You might find them moving towards aircraft maintenance and more into their core field as well, right? So you can see the redistribution of the workforce that is going to happen, right? And that is why we need to be cognizant of the fact that we need to be in a certain degree of control within our careers itself, right? And that is where entrepreneurship plays a very, very key role. Right? Now, the third piece of the puzzle, I talked about the changing ecosystem and the changing workforce, right? The enabling blocks that are there. The third piece of this puzzle is essentially how do I incentivize the young entrepreneurs in this country, right? When I say young entrepreneurs, I mean people who are young to entrepreneurship, right? It has nothing to do with age. For first-time entrepreneurs, how do we encourage them? Of course, there is the Make in India initiative, right? The Make in India initiative makes it really easy to set up a small medium enterprise, right? To be able to get access to infrastructure, to be able to get get additional funding opportunities, to get even capital loans from banks, right? Because there is a production equipment that can be imported in order to increase the capacity of manufactured goods in India, right? The ONDC again offers a good way to be able to create market access for them, right? There are several collaboration opportunities that are coming up, right? Especially with large defense deals that are coming in, the aircraft deal that I talked about. This opens up a lot of ancillary opportunities for creating ancillary products, and that is where collaboration opportunities are also likely, right? The fifth point is, of course, policy support, right? Giving it credibility. Making a company that is registered with this incentive available to them, right? So that's one set of options that is available for people who are planning to manufacture something. The second opportunity is available with the Startup India initiative, another initiative by the government of India, right? And what advantage it allows us is with a DPIIT number from the Department of Promotion of Trade, right? There is a significant simplified compliance process that is in place, right? Because it is a simplified compliance process, it is easier for a startup, right, which is, where the founders may be more technical in nature, right? It allows them to pretty much set up a company in a matter of a few days, right? There are several forums, incubation centers, technical incubation centers, several VCs, several large private organizations also setting up their own catalysts, right, where funding support can be obtained from, right? I'll talk about the networking and mentorship support. The Startup India initiative has a program called MARG, right, which allows for mentorship and advisory access, for setting up, for giving advice, for ensuring that the startups are creating new innovation, right, that they are working in areas where it can be monetized, right? And then the incubation and acceleration support comes in through multiple forums, through Atal Incubation Center, through Institute Incubation Centers. Even below that, right, there is our National Innovation and Startup Policy allows us to look at essentially creating innovation, creating that spirit and culture of innovation at a school level itself, right, where we are essentially talking about setting up of something called school innovation councils, right? We are setting up adult tinkering labs that fosters a process of innovation, a process of curiosity right from the school level, so that higher education institutes, right, colleges and universities can become accelerators of innovation. So the way you think about the funnel is ideas are coming in at a much younger age with the ability, the execution capabilities being provided by the university and the higher education institutes, right? So what the NISP policy really talks about is essentially 5 parts, right? It's about skill development, it's about funding support, it's about mentorship and guidance, it's about recognition and awards, and industry exposure, right? I already talked about the MARG being a support portal for mentorship, advisory, assistance, resilience, and growth, right? Where as a startup, you can sign up and you can get a mentor assigned to look into your technology issue, to look into your business issue, your marketing issue, and kind of offer solutions based on that, right? Under the Atal Innovation Mission, you have the Atal Tinkering Labs as well as institutes which have set up, incubation centers, about at least 20,000 square foot of space. There are several. There are almost about 20 Atal incubation centers available in the country now, right? Then we are also conducting a whole bunch of these hackathons, like Smart India Hackathon, right, or the Youth Innovation Challenge, through which these are essentially being able to create recognition and award for young innovators to take up entrepreneurship as a career option, right? So if you are a startup, if you are a young innovator, there are formal processes of the Startup India initiative that you can take advantage of. But even better is if you are a student, then the National Innovation and Startup Policy allows for several relaxations so that you can set up your company while you are still in college, right? So if you are thinking that maybe setting up a company is not my cup of tea, what if I don't get, what if my startup does not succeed, right? There is insurance against that. If you are thinking of your time spent in a startup, in the company as an investment, then there should be a return on that investment, right? How are you getting a return on that investment? Because of the policy support that you are getting, right? For example, if you are thinking about that, you want to set up a company, but you're going to spend time. What if you don't get a job while you are spending time in this company? Well, what NISP provides for is several relaxations over there, right? You will get attendance credits if you are setting up your own company and incubating it with the IIC locally, right? If you are working on your project, if you are working on your startup idea, right, on your incubated company, that counts for your final year project, right? So you can get scored on the project that you are working in. So what it does is it allows you to merge at least the final year of your curriculum as the development effort, as the bootstrapping period of the startup itself, right? Now you might say that what if I need money for my startup, right? I may need to buy something, right? Where will that money come from? There again, the multiple ways to support it, right? There is support coming in from the Institute Incubation Council, right? And then the Government of India also has something called a Startup Seed Fund, or an SSF, right? Which allows you to apply with your idea, and then there are several levels of support that you can get, starting with about 50,000, going up to about 10 lakhs, right? For women entrepreneurs, there are even more relaxations that are coming in. If you are coming in from if you're coming in from an economically weaker section, there is support available for that as well, right? You can always say that if I am going to apply for these funds and all, right, what happens to my intellectual property? What happens to the idea that I am working on, right? What if that gets stolen? Right? What if somebody else starts to work on that? Well, there is a mitigation plan for that as well, right? Because the government has something called a Kapila scheme, which allows for waiving of a lot of the attorney fees that are needed for filing the patent, right? Typically, an IIC will have ecosystem partners who are proficient in terms of doing that, right? So each state has registered lawyers who can help you do that. Then you get mentoring support from the MARG as well, right? Who can help you shape up the scope of your patent application as well, right? So that there is mentoring support and filing support that is available on your intellectual property, whether it is a patent, whether it is a copyright, whether it is a trademark that you want to apply for, right? And
The final risk that you may say is, well, I'm working on this startup. What if I get a job? I mean, if I'm working on this startup, I'm not taking up a job, right? And the fact that I'm not taking a job means that I'm going to lose potential earnings, right? So what about that risk? Well, there is mitigation plan for there as well, right? Because if you look at it, the startup that maybe your startup, the worst case situation is that the startup failed, right? The startup did not make money, but you get a lot of experience in terms of doing that. Your employability in the market increases exponentially because of your attempt at putting together a startup, right? Even if that particular idea did not pan out the way you wanted to, there are, it could plant the seeds of new ideas which are more tuned to the market, right? So entrepreneurship, as I talked about, entrepreneurship is a mindset. And once you get into that mindset, you are not going to be looking back. You are going to be looking at, maybe if I change this around a little bit, or I approached a slightly adjacent area, right? Maybe if I price this a little lower or price this in a different segment, maybe it can work out. Or maybe you switch tracks and try out something completely different. But in the process, if it does succeed, then you are generating employment, and that is nation building. Even if in 3 years' time you can get 4 or 5 employees, that is a success in my books, because you are able to create employment, right? And you will be able to create employment because as you get into the market, you will figure out that the scope of work that you have to do changes. It will increase over time, right? Unlike a government service or unlike a private sector service where there is a retirement age, once you are an entrepreneur, there is no retirement age, right? So you pretty much carry on for as much as you want, right? So additionally, most people would go on to work till about 70, right? Today, our life expectancies have gone up significantly. So you are going to be doing something that you enjoy doing for at least 10 years longer, right? That's the way I think of it, right? And in terms of the business experiences that you get out of running that startup. Because you have to make financial decisions, you have to make employee decisions, you have to make decisions about hiring, you have to make decisions about technology. These multifaceted decisions that you are taking, those are your business experiences. So if nothing else happens, your worst case situation is you close down shop and go for a job, and then your recruiter asks you, tell us about your professional experiences, and you can happily go and tell them that you got yourself a free MBA. Right? So that's the worst case analysis. What's the best case analysis? Well, the best case analysis is really great. You get to make it in, one of the 100 unicorns that are going to come up over the next few years, right? And believe me, many of these people who have started these companies have started from places where you are today, right? Many of these companies started out as garage shops, right? They started out of a bedroom. They started out of people meeting on a bus. Right? They started out with 2 friends discussing about the potential of setting up a company somewhere, having a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, sitting somewhere. Right? So your worst case situation is you have better employability. Your best case situation is that you make it a unicorn. And in between that, you have an opportunity, what is going to be the most likely scenario, right? Because if you are starting off early, right, then the most likely scenario is that by the time you graduate out of college, there will be early profitability, right? You are going to be starting to see your revenues starting to come in, right? Revenues which are more than what you are paying on payroll, right? Given that you have spent some time on the platform, right, on the product that you are building, you would have talked to multiple people, right? So by the time you graduate, you have a very good sense of what is the right price for your product, right? Otherwise, when you try to price make the product and then try to take it to market, it is very easy to miss the proper price band. You might either price it too high or you may price it too low, right? Or you might find that your customers are not willing to pay for it at all, right? So there needs to be an alternate way of monetizing the work that you have done. So that work is done while you are still in college, right? So by the time you graduate, you have a sense of what the ideal price for your product should be, right? You get to know who your customer is very well. You have a very, very good sense of what your customer looks like, what is the demography of your customer, what age group they are in, what are their digital habits, where do they live, how do they move about. So you have a very good sense of how to take the message of your product to the customer segment you are looking at, right? Which is your target segment. And that is why you have a good market product fitment, right? The product that you have built and the market that you are trying to address with that product, you will ensure that you have the good roadmap that is built for it, right? You have built the minimum viable product, but you have a roadmap of features that would make your that would bring in strong differentiators in your product vis-a-vis the market, right? And by this time, because you have early profitability, you will see investors queuing up as well. You'll see investors who are looking to come on board and will try to invest in your organization. Right? Your employees will become very, very loyal because they have seen you through the growth period, through the struggle period. So they know that you are in the business with a vision, with strong vision, right? So that's why you get loyal employees who are going to stay with you for even longer, right? You get to create a lot of IP, and you have identified what exactly is your IP, and it takes some time for once you file the IP for it to be granted. So by the time you are coming out of college, the patents will get granted, right? That is very, very important as well. And you have tried out multiple suppliers, right? So you have a sense of what would be a stable supply chain for you, right? So to summarize that discussion, if you are a young innovator still in college, there are multiple avenues for you. The process of setting up a company, the liability associated with setting up a company has been de-risked by several policy support, right? Remember, in India, you can set up your organization or your startup does not have to be a private limited company. It can be a limited liability company, which means that as a director in a limited liability company, the debts of the companies do not pass on to the directors, right? So your LLC, you're not putting your personal money in the startup itself, right? So there is absolutely no risk on your side in terms of losing money, in terms of losing time, or losing your credibility or your opportunity, right? There is no failed startup. It is just a new experience for you to learn from and move ahead, right? That said, we have a few more minutes, so I'm also going to cover opportunities for faculty members and research scholars in order to monetize their work, right? And this is where India also allows the Companies Act of 2013. It allows us to set up something called one-person companies, right? And this is essentially what was previously called as a proprietary company, but the difference is that a one-person company can be registered with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, unlike proprietary companies, right? So it has to file its reports and all of that. The advantage is that because it is a company, you can now legally offer services, right? You can raise a tax invoice for the services you provide. You can build your own website saying that you have a specialization, whether it is in industrial design, whether it is in building a website, whether it is legal services, right? Whatever it is, you can start a company by yourself, right? You can start to pay yourself a salary in your company. You can start employing people in that company itself, and they would be covered under PF laws, under all of those benefits are extended to you because you are a legal entity, right? Plus miscellaneous expenses that you have, right? You can classify them as business expenses. If you are working in your room, you need to buy an AC to work in your room. That is a legitimate business expense right? And it allows you, because you're doing a business expense, it allows you to take advantage of the input tax credit system that we have in India as well, right? So you get limited liability, same thing as a LLC, right? It's a separate legal entity. It is very, very easy to incorporate, a matter of probably a week or so. And because you are now an organization, it allows you to raise funding officially, right? And you also get tax benefits out of it. So why don't each and every one of you, if you are writing a paper, right, why not do it as a service which is generating taxes for the government, right? Because it goes towards nation building. Not only that, as a research scholar, as a faculty member, with years and years of experience, with years and years of research experience, you have a fundamental value that you have created. You have a deep understanding of a research area, of a topic where you have spent significant amount of time on, right? And because you have spent that amount of time and resource in order to build up that knowledge base, right, it should be monetizable. You can package it differently. You can create a one-person company in order to become a content creator in that specific area of your expertise, right? So you can, if you are a specialist on nanotubules, on graphene nanotubules, then you can start writing content about it and get paid for it. Right. So that's a monetization capability. If you want to explain complex concepts from your research notes, right, you can create YouTube videos out of it, right, and monetize that. So there are several ways of monetizing the deep knowledge that you have. Right? You can become, instead of becoming a resource person who will get exploited on for coming and teaching in a college for peanuts, right? You can offer adjunct faculty as a service. You can create your own company to be able to build a college or an university about delivering a class, right? That is a service you are providing, and it becomes a business to institution transaction, right? It becomes a legitimate business to institution transaction, right? You can become a research consultant, right? As a research consultant, you can work with multiple companies which are working in that particular area, and you can go and design certain experiments for them. You can design a specific drug for them. You can design a particular drug delivery format for that matter, right? So these are, and this is where you can go in as yourself. You can go as a one-person company to be able to reach out. You can build up your own web page and perform SEO on it. Do your marketing on LinkedIn, right? Hire somebody to do a little bit of marketing for you and get to know who are the potential people who are willing to pay for your services, for your knowledge base. Remember, you have spent 10 years in acquiring your PhD, right? So it's a lot of innate knowledge that you have to value yourself. If you value your knowledge, you will be able to create value for others as well. And by unlocking that value, by creating technologies around that knowledge base, you are helping the country create solutions for its local problems, right? You can, if you have reinvented something as part of your research project, you can turn that into a tech startup, into a deep tech startup, and that can get incubated at IIC or a Birac Center, right, or one of these labs itself, right? You can get into teaching and coaching. You can, with your deep knowledge, for example, if you have a specialization in electrical engineering with a deep understanding of how electrical layouts are created, you can become a technical consultant in order to provide a company support for putting together its technical bids. Right, it's a pre-sales support essentially, right? And you go in there as a subject matter expert, right? Either individually or, again, as I said, as a company itself, right? You can become a policy advisor. I mean, I can go on with several other options that are available as a science journalist, as a patent guide, right? Or even for venture capitalists, right? You can become a subject matter expert for a particular area, right? Where they are interested in looking at companies, right? Because the venture capital would not know if a technology claim is valid or not, but as a subject matter expert, you can provide that consultation to them, right? And these are just a few ways of being able to monetize the knowledge base that you have, right? I run an edutech, right? I run a business to institute edutech, right? So we are knowledge creators. The economy, the way it is moving, I think jobs that were purely data centric, right? Data entry jobs and all, they move to become more and more of IT jobs. Now with AI and process automation coming into those IT services jobs, those jobs are migrating towards knowledge-based jobs, right? Where it is up to us, the human, to be able to understand the meaning of insights that the algorithm is giving us, right? So there is a lot of opportunity for knowledge creators to come in and monetize that, right? And that is where I think the concept of Aatmanirbhar Bharat really gets materialized, where we can create 1 million startups, 1 million one-person companies which are knowledge-based and creating a knowledge economy for the future. That is what allows us to become a multi-trillion-dollar economy, or if I should be starting to quote that more in Indian rupees, right? Thank you very much for all your time, and I'd be more than happy to take questions.